Hello and welcome to the lead up to Threads 48 Threads, the fundraiser for Threads Radio. Please go to threadsradio.com and donate there. Probably if you're listening to this, you're already there. I'd like to introduce to you Anna Kostreva.
Hello.
Hi, how are you?
Great.
Anna, you're launching a series, an audio series that will be on the Threads Mixcloud called Recast by Design.
That's right. I'm excited.
So, a really tough question. What is Recast by Design?
Yeah, Recast by Design is a series of interviews and conversations that I've been having and will continue to have next year in 2020 about solidarity, politics, and sustainability in cities. I'm really interested in talking with spatial practitioners, which is a kind of open term for architects, urbanists, designers, and activists and artists. It's important for me to find people that are reflecting on material and social conditions in like cities and sited places.
Right. That's and so what format does the series take?
It's long form interviews so far that are about an hour long. And tonight or this evening, we're going to do some clips and introduce them. Yeah. Fantastic.
So I've got a playlist of clips here from you. Can you tell us what's on the first one?
Sure. So maybe I'll give a little bit of an overview about the 4 interviews. It's pretty mixed between artists, urbanists, and architects. There are 2 interviews that have been done in Indonesia and 2 here in Berlin or in Germany. And I really recommend listening to the full shows. So it's been kind of a shame to have to clip them down to 10 minutes, but I want to give people a taste of what's going on. And in the very first interview, I'm talking with Fajar Kresno-Murti and urbanist Maria Adriani about their practice of Ugahari in Yogyakarta. This practice, their methodology is related to permaculture and has a more holistic idea about design than just thinking about the form and materials of a building. Instead, they try to think about buildings as part of larger social and ecological systems. So, yeah, we can tune into that.
Okay, so I'll play that.
Salah satu metode kita dalam merespon.
One of the Ugahari methods is to respond.
Not build, but respond.
Aku mau tanya, what are other Ugahari methods?
From the kampung, we Ugahari learn many things, like how we make a design. Like I said before, that the design is the last thing. The first we must respond the site, the social interaction, the issues on the area.
Whether it's social or cultural or
also
issue.
Respond the burden of the site, because in the middle class lifestyle we always make the border more clear and clear.
Okay, he make a comparative among the middle classes and the kampung people, but where the middle classes likes to build borders like fence or something and walls, but kampung people tend to be fluid in terms of borders, make a relation, something like that. Kampung provide the ideology base for Ugahari. For example, like kampung mostly in survival mode, right? They don't have many options on the materials, on the workers, like they don't have many options like the middle class or upper class. So Ugahari work that way in terms of when it comes into a project, then Ugahari tend to list the resources that they have and works from that. So design came later. That's the lineage from the kampung to Ugahari. Actually, I tend to think that sustainability is bullshit. I'm sorry, but yeah, because many architectures in Indonesia talking about sustainability, education, and blah blah blah, also talking about that. But they are not having the right, not the right way, but they not having the right ideology or basic thinking about sustainability. While we think about that sustainability, we also see that, for example, kampung people starving, for example, or needing water, for example, and they are not just care about that. They are just building green something, but in reality, it's very different. We want to, like for example, when we build this house, we want to have like solar panel, so we can be independent in terms of electricity. But the thing is, solar panel is very expensive. Of course, we can make wherever. We can reduce the technology and so on and so on. We can have friends or wherever whoever who can build it, but it's like how many steps, like how miles steps to get the solar panel or whatever. So well, then we decide to have like car battery, electricity from car battery, which is we still dependent to government electricity, but we're not that dependent to the government electricity. We somehow can reduce it. We want to have like water catchment area, like in each project, but to make it well, satu susah. It's different, it's costly, and we have to it's not necessary, because the thing about the water is not about the catchment, right? The thing about the water is to keep the water inside the site for a long time. So in that terms, we we introduce the plants to each clients, because everybody actually love plants, but they are not having the time to take care of it. So they love it, and what we can do is bring the narrative of the plants going up, so they can involve in the planting and so on. And we have the idea of saving water in each project by more sustainable rather than having the catchment and so on.
Tapi I think alami keterbatasan kan untuk memecahkan masalah. Kan kalau misalnya kita di Kendeng gitu loh, itu selalu kawasan gitu, pemecahan soal sustainability air itu kawasan.
So Yossi told me that he thinks that, according to my examples, that that's when the architecture faced the walls in terms of sustainability, because architecture only tends to think about the design, architectural design, but not in the holistic issues that comes within the area. We kind of agree that we are not in the sustainability term. At the same time, the architectural education institution or wherever it is also not planting the right ideology, because all the developmental system that rose in Indonesia like 1916 and so on. So they don't put the right ideology, they don't put the good social problems, the social analysis. Well, I'm cynical, so you know why I take my days off from a lecture. So I'm cynical to architectural education in Indonesia. He asked me to give you how the developers and constructors logic in Indonesia
destroy
the craftsmanship in
every person. Itu kan
Terusin aja
keterampilan. Jadi mengubah mindset, terutama dipengaruhi oleh.
I'll make a comparison for you. The developer system in Indonesia is more hierarchical, so craftsmen are not really well paid because the system requires the craftsmen to following order, so they are not using their creativity or brain following order that described by the drawings, for example, and also requested by the financial circumstances. Like because of that, the craftsman's not having the sense to relate with the materials. Because the material is not important. The important is the drawing or whatever it is. So they cut, they trim, or putting things not by thinking, but because of it's necessary to do. So they are losing their logic in terms of putting some things together. That's the most difficult issue in the workshop, to revolve the craftsman's mindset. It's come from building the relation of the tukang with the other people, right? Like building the relation with the clients and craftsmen clients and craftsmen's. Then the sense that already in each person coming alive. So that's the basic things before to build the relation of craftsman and materials. When they already have the sense to treat the materials, then they can work themselves actually. They can bring that knowledge for them.
Wow.
Yeah, so
Thanks. Oh, sorry.
that was Yossi and Maria. They were like giving us a bit of a reflection on the individualism of the middle class in general, and rather than thinking like fluidly with neighbors and about hierarchies rather than trusting craftsmen.
Yeah, it's also a kind of the audio representation is really nice there. You can kind of hear how embedded they are in the world around them, and their engagement with the community kind of comes through in the audio. So
yeah, that they use this word kampung, which is the Indonesian word for urban neighborhoods, and how they're really learning from those communities and that they have lived with. Which, if you listen to the longer interview, you can hear how they spent. How Yossi spent about 5 years living in a community before he actually built his first building with them, and that kind of journey to work together and think about meaningful interactions. Yeah,
the kampungs are like the basic kind of living group in Indonesia. I spent some time in Yogyakarta, and they're also the basic building block of political movements. Certain kampungs have different styles. I know from people who were trying to put on shows or do other things, getting the approval of the head of the kampung in the area, the way they wanted to do it, was absolutely essential. And once that was achieved, so much more became possible for them. So yeah, it's very interesting.
Yeah, I think where I want to head with this or transition into the next interview is just thinking about the topics of like how to critically reflect on sort of individualism, consumption, like buzzwords, and teaching as well, which they mentioned a little bit about, what it is that we can teach and bring to young people or to other people, and thinking about practice and how that involves community. So I want to introduce Folke Kopperling's this clip of her conversation. She's a professor at the Technical University at Brunswick, and she teaches architecture-related art, and her curriculum is really fascinating, and she works with students on full-scale built works So yeah, I'm looking forward to sharing that with you guys.
All right, let's go into that then.
For example, in London or especially actually in England, I'm really interested how we build it. For example, the Jellyfish Theatre, which we built in 2011, was made with a lot of architecture students, because they all had to do their practice, or unemployed architects. So they didn't have any practice. Of course, so we are really hands-on. We are artists, because Martina also has an architecture education and he's an artist. And so a lot of architecture students and Finnish architects helped us after their education, and we are really grateful, of course, the first time that we got practice. So that we just left them open. They could design things, because we didn't have a perfect design in our mind. We didn't know. It's more like you can compare it actually to a painter with a palette. So you have all the materials, but you don't know how it will look in the end. So it's a process of building. And for example, like the Jellyfish Theatre, we could experiment, or also with the amphitheatre in Rising in Cambridge, we could experiment with the facade. And everybody, they could use their ideas, how it could look like. I could imagine how a process could lead to something. So there was not a finished design, it got developed. And so we noticed that there's a really big interest from students in us, and so we got invited to do more workshops, to do more teachings, and so also a lot of installations or structures got developed through students. It was actually a call from students. It's really interesting. It's really different now, because now it's, for me, it's my curriculum. I want to give them, and so it actually doesn't come from them. So my whole formal aesthetics actually results out of this material we have. So you don't go to a construction store and build woodwork. You're using what we have, and the aesthetics comes from the material you have there. So it's a totally different design teaching, because it comes from a material and then it goes to function. Right. And so it's also different. It's also a critique, of course, how we build, and it's a critique what we see and how it has to be. So it's almost maybe you can compare it with a white blank sheet. You have a white sheet, and then you paint something. And what I have already a drawing, and then you have to deal with this drawing. And how do you make it happening? And this is the same as the materials. We have that materials, and how can you think? And this also gives you much more freedom than anything before, because if you have to build the materials, you are really stuck in this also kind of budget modes, because I bought me this material and I can't experiment with it anymore. And found material gives you much more freedom, because it's, first of all, it's economic side, it's free, and we have a lot, and then it also gives, and then it's the shape of a material, because you would maybe never use the shape.
Another thing I'm curious about with your teaching is you do large group projects where you realize one student or multiple students' designs into something that's constructed, and I'm curious how the decision-making process goes from everyone designing and then moving towards one design.
There are different methods to this. So in the first year, the first session, I'm doing a group session with all 240 students. For example, the big curtain, the big wool curtain was made in 4 hours by all the students. And I give the design, and I said, so we meet. So this is a group session to get to know each other. The first session and first semester, when they meet each other the first time, because they all come from different areas, different backgrounds, I think it's a good idea to do a group session, installation, to get to know each other, and you can't do design. So I think, oh, let's do this. Or for example, when I started 3 years ago, for example, we did a big lineup with books, because we had to move our library, and they started on one side and they had to bring the books on the other side. So we did a big lineup, and they stand opposite each other and they read the title of the books to each other. So they get to know each other, you know. So this is just the first session. And further on in the semester, or actually in the second semester, I'm doing group works. But first, it starts actually with everybody, for example, with the islands, first they started to do an own model, just to use for construction. For example, the ponton was a model which every student had to do, which is carrying 1 kilo of sugar. And then from this idea, they design new ideas after they got an input about climate change in the islands in the South Pacific, and when they were thinking about the theme. So the construction comes together with the thematic issue. And then they build groups with the same theme, students who have the same theme, the same interest, they're building groups, and then they 2 or 3 build one model together. And then from this step it goes to kind of a selection process, and then the students select 4 or 5. From this selection we had in each group, because we had 4 groups with 60 models. It went in a selection group with 8 models. From which group we had 8 models.
Do the students select?
Yes, the students select.
Okay, so it's with discussions with the students.
Yeah.
And how actively involved are the tutors in this discussion?
They have to moderate it.
Okay, they're there.
They also have a vote. But the students are presenting their ideas, and then the other students have the moment where they can discuss it and also criticize it, but also honor it. And this works pretty well. And of course, not always the best got built, but
from the tutors and from your point of view.
Yeah, from your point of view. But then it goes in another selection process. So in the end, actually, the students don't select it anymore, what they get built, because then they're too much involved in it. And then we invite other professionals. For example, the selection process from the models you have seen on the islands, on the displays, mirrors, which was more of a professional jury out of people from a sailing club and a curator and from the faculty members.
Okay. And they give some feedback about what might float better, or
also from actually more from the content, and also what would work together. But then the authorship goes really behind, because sometimes we say this model is good and this model is good, and then the students work again on it. So actually it's a kind of a hybrid.
Right.
It's a hybrid out of this model and this model. And for example, the living unit, especially, there are so many ideas in the living unit from all different kinds of models. You can't say this is a model of this student group, because there are also ideas in it from this group and this group and this group, and there you really lose your authorship. And this I really like, because it's different than in the art world. In the art world, every artist wants to have their authorship. It's really important, and I really like collectors where it's not like this.
I think this also works well in the first year of studies.
Yeah, definitely.
Much better, or much more easily than later.
I'm not sure. For example, this. That's right. But we have also seminars, especially with the carnival. You know, with the. There, it's the same. It's only possible. You can only do this big project when you do it group work. But this was the same procedure, it was the same method. That each of the students makes an own model, and then you discuss it. And when there's a jury, this time it was made by the students, and it was not my favorite. What realized there, but it won the first prize. But it was more elected by the students, so the students voted 4-2. No, I think 12-4. We were 4 tutors who were also involved in the selection process, and. This got realized, and the students were really happy, because you have to take the students, you have to involve them, otherwise they have no motivation to build it. Because this is a really big part in our institute, that we do that one-to-one realization. And this is a big step. From the model to the realization part. It's a really big step, and this is either you have to motivate them, or they're really exciting to do it, and this is a big point. Otherwise, you have to build it alone. You have to, you have to get them in the boat.
Right, but I think it's also really good practice for thinking about alternative models and building practice to think about how to work with the group and to maintain motivation and what it takes to get beyond a sort of single authorship in order to maybe get beyond the problems of economy, like when people say it's not possible, it's because it's economically not viable. You get around labor problems if there's enough motivation within a group.
This is Subtext Radio, launching the first episode of Recast by Design, an audio series about solidarity, politics, and sustainability in cities. And that was just a clip of a show with FolkeKopperling, talking about working with materials at hand and how that can give people a sense of freedom. And she was also reflecting on hybrid authorship and maintaining motivation of a group, but also getting to know each other through different exercises. And I'm talking about these interviews with Nathan Gray here.
Hi. Yeah, super fascinating. It's interesting. I wonder how significant it is, this idea of like working in groups, as opposed to, I mean, obviously most artworks are realized by groups as well, but they have one person's name on the end. I wonder what the actual differences on the ground are for these sorts of things.
I think the differences are pretty huge in the decision making, and also in the effect on the humans involved.
The designers or the users?
No, I think those creating the work definitely have a different relationship with it to make a collaborative piece.
Do her students continue that sort of process outside in the industry, as it were?
No, I think not. I think that's sort of the reason why I find her curriculum so interesting, to give the students a chance to work differently, because the normal building industry is so hierarchical, which we'll actually talk about in the next radio clip. Maybe I'll just go ahead and kind of talk about that a little bit more. The next interview is with Kamil Muhammad, and he's a social justice architect in Jakarta, Indonesia. He's got a small office doing commercial and research-based work, and often the research-based work is part of the larger organization of Architecture Without Borders, which I'm not going to go into detail here, but it has a lot to do with facilitating collaborative processes of creating a sense of place and desire. And that's why I would link it back to Folke Kopperling's work, because he's working with large communities and trying to understand that group and the group dynamics in order to share a vision.
But we're talking about concrete architecture here, not the architecture of social justice.
Yes.
When you say social justice architect,
yes.
Is that a term that he's like come up with, or is this something that's a genre of work?
I would say that the Architecture Without Borders is a group, like it's a international group of people that kind of come together under a charter of different values, and that's kind of what's considered social justice architecture as one typology of it, the different values that they hold along kind of valuing social concerns over commercial concerns.
Yeah. Okay, let's go into it. Okay.
So it's not just about, and it will never be just about architecture and buildings and infrastructures and settlements, but really it's about how you negotiate your aspirations and your visions with really a lot of people that's involved in here, because it's like I'm beginning more and more seeing that it should never be about like architects and residents. There has to be like aspects of individualities in this. Like you cannot have residents as just like this clump of poor people to be helped, or to be assisted even. Yeah. But really there's individuals in there who have different aspirations, who have different purposes from each other, and that's what we try to do. Like we try to get to a level where at the very least the conversations about architecture makes sense. When we want to talk architecture, of course. And of course that doesn't happen often, because architecture is something that people, not even just in Kampung, like everywhere, people like to work with buildings, with drawings, with crazy looking stuff. Yeah. But how is that relevant, So then you have to compel, like you have to force yourself to reframe a lot of things so that there is a purpose for anyone to be there, not just you, but also the residents to come to these meetings, to come to these facilitations, these workshops. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess that's also what I was thinking is like, considering that people in the kampung have a self-built mentality towards their environment, what does the architect bring to that situation?
It's a great question that is kind of difficult to answer. I'll give you an example of what we did recently, like a few months ago actually. We did a housing workshop because the whole point of that housing workshop is to come up with some sort of master plan, I guess, or maybe not even master plan, like some sort of product, yeah, like an output to be used as a tool of negotiation with the government, so that we don't face the same problem of government coming in, or not even the government. Like sometimes you get the private sector coming in. Look, this is what we're going to do. This is what we're going to build. This is going to be a nice house. You got furniture in there. I don't know if you've seen the film The Myth of Pruitt-Igoe. That's basically how they try to entice people to go into these apartments.
Could you say the name of the film again?
The Myth of Pruitt-Igoe.
Pruitt-Igoe?
Pruitt-Igoe.
Pruitt-Igoe.
Yeah.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
So it's basically this apartments, I think in the late 60s, basically, which was a way for to move people from a slummy area to a new place. Mm-hmm. And as part of the deal is the units are stuffed with all these amenities, like furniture and stuff like that. But I think only ran for a few years until it got demolished. It was quite interesting because Charles Jenks said that sort of marks the end of modernism. Mm-hmm. And what's interesting is that even today, like that's the way we had a governor. That was the way to entice people to move to these apartments, to clear off your kampungs, and look, we'll demolish it. And the offer is that you get to go to these apartments, and you have a fridge, you have a bed, right? So we learn from that, and what we try to do is that, look, even if you're against that, like sometimes it's really quite intuitive for people to be against something like that. Not because they don't want it, it's because that they position themselves as, look, but I have a house right now. Why would I want to move there? You know, it's something very, it's very human. You know what I mean? Like, this is where I've been, like, these past 30, 40 years, and I don't have to pay for it. Like, all this other stuff that is measurable is quite incomparable to how they feel about their own place, right? But nevertheless, you still have to have an argument to go against that. So what we did was, the whole thing with the housing workshop is really to try to build this argument. Like, why do you really not want to be in a what we call it here is rusun is apartment. Do you really not want to be there? Like, why would you not want to be there? So the workshop was about learning of what makes a great house, really, and then use that as a basis, use that knowledge as a basis for making their case against this type of housings, which in a way that if someone makes a great rusun, then that argument can be broken. You know what I mean? But the whole point is that you start to think critically on what you are against and what you are for in these sort of conditions. So that's like the things that we try to do with ASF. ASF is comprised of young architects who have their day jobs, basically. So we are all like weekend warriors, sort of gang. But yeah, like someone has to take care of it, and we don't. It's very much like a completely pro bono kind of thing. Like, we don't make money out of it. We just like to be there, and we've made friends there, and it's all self-funded. I run my own studio, and there's like some commercial stuff and private sector stuff, and part of it is to fund like this, like what I do. With ASF, but ASF itself is very much like a self-funded kind of thing.
Okay, but you do manage to get some. Did you manage to get the seed funding for the pallet house?
Yeah. So the seed funding was actually for the community.
Yeah.
We helped them in preparing that, like the design and that sort of stuff. To
prepare the proposal.
For the proposal, yeah. Yeah. And I think last I heard was that like the seed funding. So it's basically like, I think it's partially been paid out for that pilot house.
Okay.
So I think they've used part of the funding for improvement in different parts of the campus for repainting. I think the last project that the company did together was to renovate the facade of the houses. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, I find it's in architecture. It's often necessary to like split yourself in half, where you like do the work that makes the money and the work that makes the meaning or the socially visionary, artistically interesting work.
I'm not sure if like I'm beginning more and more to think like I'm not sure if it's ideal to just do one and not the other, like just commercial or just kampung, or just completely social, because then the best thing in working with like the private sector is that you get to see how the private sector behaves, because it's never really just about numbers, it's also about body language, how and what people say, like all this sort of stuff, and I think that what makes an entity, like how the private sector behaves, how the public sector behaves, how this company behaves, so and understanding like it needs to be very much cross-sectoral, it needs to be cross-disciplinary, and also cross-market, so that you can capture at least like the fundamentals of how the system actually behaves toward one another. And the crazy thing to do that is to actually be in there at the same time. I know it sounds crazy, but like I cannot find any other way to actually understand like how this operates at all these different levels.
Okay, welcome back.
Yeah.
Well, you want to back announce that one?
Yeah, so that was Camille reflecting on the Architecture Without Borders projects that he works on, thinking about creating arguments as a group, and also talking about seeing his own practice from multiple sides, both from commercial work and from social or pro bono work. So something I really like about the way he talks about his work is understanding what's really human about architecture and places.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so it seems like the last interview that we'll play is about to come up. What's this one all about?
Yeah, so to like kind of transition between the two, I think the problem of work comes up over and over again for me in talking to practitioners and thinking about what contemporary issues we're facing and the problem of productivity in particular, whether it's really the ultimate and necessary and good thing that we've all been striving after, when it seems to literally be destroying environments and biodiversity. So that's kind of where the last interview comes in, where with Kunstblock, and they are taking a lot of actions against the capitalist system we're living in. And I talked to their members, 3 of their members, under the aegis of Kim Sontag 1, Kim Sontag 2, and Kim Sontag 3, about their actions of solidarity in protesting rising rents, lack of affordable housing, and evictions in Berlin. And they also talk about ideas about shared authorship, which we already had previously in the show, and kind of answer how that can change the capitalist system that we're living in as a significant contribution to working together rather than working by ourselves. And now we'll go into the interview clip with Kunstblock.
Yeah, fantastic. I wanted to ask before we go into that, do you know the origin of the alias of the Kunstblock members? Who is...
Kim Sontag.
Yeah, who
It's anonymous. Yeah. As anonymous as it gets.
Okay, well, yeah, cool. So thanks a lot, Anna. It's been great to have you on. And yeah, I'd like to once more spruik the Threads 48 fundraiser. Go to the threadsradio.com site and donate if you can. It's tough times for everyone and we all need to help each other out. It's a good time that art and music can help us get through. So let's do this, people. And this is the last clip from Recast by Design, an interview with the Berlin artists activist collective Kunstblock.
Problematic to have your, let's say, traditional art practice. I like to do sculpture, for example, and then you have this urgency of we got to do something. We got to really work together and change this fucking system, right? So I'm making my sculptures and I'm trying to sell them in the system, and then I'm working collectively, collaborative with people to smash the system, let's say. And this is really a strange situation to be in, it feels. But I guess most of us are in this situation. Also people who go to work for some shitty company and they don't like it and they still got to do it because they want to make money.
You fight to do like a job. If you are kind of like honest with yourself and you're doing a job because you need money, right? But this thing of like selling lies as a job, it's something I cannot accept as a form of art, you know. So it's kind of like if you engage into that, to me, it means that you speak the truth to as far as you can. Like you do your best to speak the truth. It sounds very banal in a way, but on the other hand, it is part of what, to me, art practice should look like.
after the Mietenwahnsinn demo, we gathered together and thought about how to carry on, and there were a lot of different ideas. And one of the ideas that came to fruition was in June of the same year. So in Germany, there's this thing called the ZIA, the Zentrale Immobilienausschuss, which is like the core real estate lobby group, which is right now very active against the Berlin Senate's proposed plan to regulate rents in the city. So that's how it's well known at the moment. Back in 2018, I mean, every year it organises a big nationwide get-together where all of the key stakeholders, big companies, the people running the lobby group get together in one place. And in 2018, it was in Berlin at the Tempodrom, in a white circus tent kind of structure that hosts these types of conferences. And we kind of were aware that it was going to happen, and he came up with a specific vocabulary of action to disturb the event, or at least disturb its entrance.
We recorded a hypnosis because we were thinking that maybe the lobbyists could be motivated to think different about who they are and where they stand. And so the text of the hypnosis was more or less that everybody in the city needs space, and that they should kind of fly up in the hypnosis and see all of us, how everybody needs space and who we all are. And then after when the hypnosis slows down, they should come down to the ground and stand with all of us and realize that there is not a profiting from people who are in need of space. And so we had it on these little boxes that you can carry around, and
little speakers.
Speakers, exactly. That was quite loud. And we circled around the place where the lobbyists had food, like where they had a dinner, and they did recognize us, that we are there, and they did maybe listen also a little bit. And the director, or he's not the director, but some CEO, he came out because, of course, pretty fast the question came up if they are going to call the police about us, and then there
was a lot of security around.
There was a lot of security, exactly, and we were just circling around with our speakers, and then we had quite a long discussion with him where he just tried to convince us that they are thinking socially and that they are not ignoring what we're saying, etc. So in that sense, they wanted to talk to us. Like, that's something that is very obvious. That
it was quite clear that we were a nuisance.
Yes, and it was really obvious that the SIA anyway. Also last year there was another protest from the Mietenbündnis against their annual day. And there it was also very clear that they feel unrighteously attacked because they have the idea that they are acting social.
Which is absolutely crazy if you look at who's in it. Like, one of the people who's running the thing is Peter Altmaier, who's a CDU politician that's been pushing a conservative agenda. He's now Germany's economic minister at the moment. Another one is John von Freyen, who is a business person who in the 90s was responsible for a lot of the mass privatizations that happened in the former East, but also in the former West. So he also was involved in privatizing Lufthansa, but he also ran the Treuhand process of was heavily involved in the Treuhand process of privatizing the former East. And now, and then became the boss of GSW, which bought out which ended up being bought out by Deutsche Wohnen, which is notorious as one of the most unscrupulous landlords in Germany. Owns, I think, around 61,000 apartments across the country. So these are big players that that have their fingers across the conservative end, or the dominant conservative end of politics, and also business.
Yes. So in that sense, of course, sometimes when we, especially in the beginning, when we talked about actions, a lot of artists have a hard time in actually really attacking kind of organizations or people for what they do. They maybe want to have more of a conversation about it or something, and there I'm insecure if a conversation with kind of quite scrupulous people does make sense, where I would rather see it that it does make sense to really have a harsh kind of critique, and how to materialize this kind of critique is always a challenge, I think.
But we also made a very spectacular projection that night.
Yes.
Yeah.
And to say, so, I mean, even though this action might have we didn't get any press about it, or there was not much like feedback otherwise, but for us as a group it was a really good action, because we, on one hand, we had fun with the speakers and with kind of bringing everything upside down in their process of having a nice dinner, and then also to testing what kind of tools we can use. And in that sense, I think it's nice to develop more.
And also finding a methodology, because the text was co-written. Like, I think we wrote it all together, or
Yes.
someone wrote a first version, and then we
Of the hypnosis.
drafted it together, and then someone else recorded it, and then someone else patched it together.
Yes.
And then everyone carried the speakers, and the same deal with the projector. Someone organised the projector, someone else organised the generator, and then it was like the entire surface of the entrance to Anhalter Bahnhof. It was quite large. And there were some nice images that came out of that, which did get like floated around a bit on social media afterwards. And so I guess, there was like the one thing of doing something cheeky and pissing off these real estate bosses, so they realised that someone was watching them, which I think was a precursor then to what happened the next year, when there was another demonstration action that was bigger. And it's clear that they're scared about that. So like there's that level, and then there's also what it did for us internally as a group. Like, we can do this.
When you start to talk a little bit about private property and who funds what, who is the sponsor of what, it's it's a territory where it's very easy to kind of like create end up in situations in which the discussions are not particularly easy. But it's also because art lately, sadly, has developed quite of an expertise in using critique as a tool to basically provide for a certain representation. But eventually, the context in which this critique is happening is then completely demolishing the critique itself.
The importance of protest, or of protest altogether on the street. I mean, recently someone said to me, demonstrations are kind of a pre-form of militancy. It's like, and I think this sometimes gets lost in the thought about demonstrations. When I hear people telling me, I find it quite lame to walk in the streets with a banner. Why should I do this? What should it help? Then I find this sentence really valuable.
So wanting that more could come.
Yes, that more could come, and that people are connected, that they are organized, and you can show this with big numbers. And that's why protest on the street is still a tool that is used, because it's just it has shown that it's a very valuable possibility to show also strength you have. To be together, I mean, it's a really nice feeling to the street belong to you when you're on the streets with other people together. And recently, in the last couple of years, it also seems that many people are realizing that this is actually still a really good possibility to to work like this with demonstrations.
Yeah.
And so in that sense, there is going to be another big demonstration coming up on 28th of March. And it's the Global Housing Action Day, where it's going to be really many cities all over the world joining in protest for housing for all. So that in the long term, I think the idea will be that housing is not a commodity anymore. And I think this is shared by many people, this interest, that we don't need housing to be like, I don't know, like a ring of diamond or something. You know, it's something that people need to have, and so you can't make it rare in a market that is overheated.
Right.
And so I recommend everyone to get organized for the 28th of March.
Bam, bam.
Yeah.
Great.
Because I think, we do have a lot of strength as people who need housing, and everybody has to live somewhere.
I want to thank Subtext Radio so much for hosting the show. And of course, the people I interviewed, Yossi, Maria, Folke, Camille, and the Kunstblock. It's been super, super special to talk with all of you. And if you're listening live, please check out the Subtext Radio page and hear the full-length shows and get in touch.